All right, today we're going to peel back the curtain and look behind the code to find the blueprint for a truly modern website. And hey, we're not going to write a single line, I promise. But by the end of this, you'll get the core ideas, the stuff that really makes the best sites tick.
You know, when you land on a really clean, beautiful website, it's so easy to just think, wow, that must be some crazy, complex code. Or, just some slick design work.
But the truth is, the best websites, they're built on something much deeper. They're built on a solid blueprint. It's this set of principles that blend structure, discipline, and maybe most importantly, a deep, deep understanding of you, the user.
All right, so let's get into it. Every solid structure needs a foundation, right? Well, for a website, that foundation is HTML. That's the language that gives all the content on a page its basic shape.
But think about it. A skeleton isn't just a random pile of bones, is it? Nope. Every single bone has a name, it has a purpose. And that brings us to a really crucial idea: meaning.
So picture a book with no chapter titles, no page numbers, just an endless wall of text. Kind of useless, right? Well, for a web browser or a screen reader, that's exactly what a web page built with just generic boxes feels like.
And you can really see the difference right here. The layout on the left, it's just boxes inside of boxes. But look at the one on the right. It uses what we call semantic tags, like header and nav. These give meaning to the structure. They tell the browser, hey, this part up here, that's the header. And this bit, that's the navigation. It's not just a box, it has a purpose.
So why does this matter so much? Well, this isn't just some nitpicky detail for developers. It has huge, real-world impact. It makes the web more discoverable for search engines like Google, way more accessible for people using screen readers, and honestly, a whole lot easier for teams of developers to actually maintain the site. Okay, so we've got our meaningful foundation. Now we need the actual blueprint, a set of rules for how we write the code itself.
Think about it. Most websites these days are built by teams, not just one person. So the code can't be some kind of personal, cryptic language that only the author understands. It absolutely has to be clear and consistent for everyone involved.
I mean, just look at this. These two blocks of code, they do the exact same thing. But which one can you actually read and understand at a glance? Yeah, exactly. This is precisely why we have coding standards, rules that enforce consistent formatting. It's all about readability.
And that lack of clarity, it has a massive cost. 60%. On average, that's how much of a software project's entire lifetime cost is spent just on maintenance. That's people trying to read, understand, and fix code that's already been written. Insane, right?
So, you see, readability isn't a luxury. It's not just nice to have. Clear, standardized code is just flat out cheaper and more efficient in the long run. Period.
All right, let's move on to the next layer of our blueprint. We've got our structure, we've got our rules. Now it's time to talk about how things actually look, the visual layout. And for that, we use something called CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets.
Now, at the very heart of CSS layout is this concept called the box model, and it's actually pretty simple. Everything on a web page is basically a rectangular box, and this model gives us a super powerful way to manage the space around all those boxes.
Okay, here's a problem I'm sure you've seen a million times. You put a border around something and the text inside is just squished right up against the edge. It feels cramped, it's hard to read, it just looks bad.
The solution? Padding. All we do is add some space inside the box, creating this nice little buffer between the content and the border. See? It gives the text room to breathe. And what if you want to create space between two different boxes? That's where margin comes in. It adds space outside the box, pushing other elements away. And honestly, getting a handle on padding and margin, that is absolutely fundamental to creating those clean, organized layouts we all love.
But of course, websites today don't just live on a single desktop screen, do they? They have to work on our phones, our tablets, our giant monitors. They have to adapt. And that brings us to our next crucial layer, responsiveness.
Responsive design is just what it sounds like. It's an approach that makes sure a website is usable and looks great no matter what device you're viewing it on. And the key piece of technology that makes all this magic happen is something called a media query.
So, the way it usually works is this. You start by designing for the smallest screen first, mobile first, they call it, with a simple single-column layout. Then you use these media queries, which are basically like if statements for your screen size, to check if the screen is wider. And when it hits a certain width, or a breakpoint, you apply new rules to create more complex, multi-column layouts. Simple but so powerful.
Okay, so let's recap. We've built a website that's structured, it's disciplined, it's adaptable. We're doing pretty good. But we're missing what is arguably the most important layer of all, the human one.
And this is the question we have to ask ourselves. After all this work, does the website we've built actually work for everyone? What about people with disabilities? This is where web accessibility comes into the picture.
So, there are these things called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short. They give us a whole framework for making the web inclusive. This means doing things like providing text descriptions for images so screen readers can describe them, making sure you can navigate the entire site using just a keyboard, and avoiding stuff that could actually be harmful, like certain kinds of flashing animations.
So in the end, when you really peel back all the layers of a truly great modern website, what do you find? It's not just a bunch of clever code. You find a blueprint built on structure, built on discipline, and, above all else, built on empathy. It's about a commitment to building a web that genuinely works for everyone,